Good afternoon and welcome to the Virtual Apprenticeship Week GM, which is a series of 13 events over 10 days, covering both of the GCSE and A-level results days up until the 21st of August. Thanks for attending this session regarding myth-busting for parents and carers. The whole week is an opportunity to promote apprenticeship opportunities across Greater Manchester and hear about the positive impact that they have on people. So we've organised a range of events this week. My name is Matt Leigh. I work for the Greater Manchester Learning Provider Network, and I deliver presentations to schools, in assemblies, in classrooms, and to parents as well. And I also work for a network of apprenticeship training providers, so we've got that local knowledge. I've got some guests who've joined me today. We've got three real-life apprentices with us, Courtney, Jacob and Hannah, who later on are going to share some of their experience with you. And there's time today at the end of the session for some questions and answers, so please use the chat function and we'll pick up any of those questions at the end. I'm just going to go through today a little bit of an overview of what apprenticeships are. Then we're going to bring in the apprentices to share their story, and then we're going to talk a little bit about where to find vacancies, and also just to highlight the challenging situation that we're in at the moment with the COVID-19 pandemic and where the opportunities can still be found. So an apprenticeship is that blend of working and learning. You work for a real employer, so you gain work experience, and at the same time you're working towards an apprenticeship qualification, and that qualification is relevant to the job that you're doing. And you spend 80% of your time working for your employer and 20% of your time as the apprentice studying towards your apprenticeship qualification. So an apprenticeship is a real job. It's not work experience that a student may have done in year 10. It's not a practice job at the back of a college. You are a fully fledged member of staff at that business. When we talk about a real employer, it could be a business that's there to make a profit or a business that's there to provide a service. Either way, the apprentice has a job role, has functions within that business that are important. Is paid employment. The minimum salary for apprentices at the moment is £4.15 an hour. That doesn't mean that if you do an apprenticeship you will get paid that, but there is a minimum there to protect the apprentice from being paid any less than that. That minimum payment can only be paid for 1 year as well. So if you're on a 2, 3, even longer apprenticeship, your apprenticeship salary would jump to at least the minimum salary for your particular age group. Apprenticeships are for everyone. Anybody over the age of 16 can start an apprenticeship. We know apprentices who've started apprenticeship for a career change purpose in their 40s and 50s. So they are open to absolutely everyone. And in any case, there are no fees to pay for your apprenticeship training. The cost of training is either met by the employer or government, or a combination of both. So as mentioned before, 80% of your time is spent working at your employer. Whilst you're there, you'll gain work experience. So on the first day of your apprenticeship, the employer knows that the apprentice is not an expert. It's probably going to be their first job in many cases. So the tasks and activities the apprentice is given are going to be fairly straightforward to start with. As time progresses, those tasks are going to become more complex. The apprentice is going to be given more responsibility. I mean, occasionally, every now and again, they might get one of those tasks wrong, but at the same time, that is all building up their work experience. The role of the employer is to build that work experience, enable you to contribute towards the business, and gain skills and experiences that will benefit the apprentice for the rest of their career. What the employers can't do is generally they're not teachers or trainers, so they haven't got the in-house expertise to be able to deliver the education element of the apprenticeship, the training element of the apprenticeship. So the apprentices will spend 20% of their time doing off-the-job learning. That can be delivered in a variety of ways, and I think the couple most common examples are The traditional way, which was the apprentice will go to work 4 days a week and go to the training provider, the college or even the university that is delivering the apprenticeship training. Or you may find that the apprentice spends their whole time in work, but someone from the training provider comes to visit them on a regular basis, but also sets them online learning to work towards their apprenticeship study. So, for example, we've got an apprentice who works for our business, and Monday to Thursday she works for us, does our work, and then one Friday a month someone from a training provider comes in and does some one-to-one teaching and learning with her. And on the other 3 Fridays every month, she does her online learning, but alongside us in the office. We don't give her any of our business's work on every Friday. So that's how she gains her sort of 20% off the job. You do also find now that there obviously is more blending learning, there is more online learning, and I think as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think we'll see more and more of that, and perhaps a slight reduction in some of the traditional face-to-face learning that we've had in the past. There are currently over 450 different types of apprenticeships, so I don't want to sit here until midnight going through all of them. These are just 15 examples that are there to really sort of highlight some of the different types. So you can broadly split the apprenticeships probably into 2 different types. You've got your traditional apprenticeships that perhaps people perceive when they think of an apprenticeship. So your engineering, your construction type job roles, perhaps your childcare, your hairdressing. Those apprenticeships are still here. The qualifications have been recently updated to make sure they reflect modern working practices. In addition to those, you've got some jobs that perhaps historically you might have had to go to university for, or to gain a professional qualification to work in those sectors. So there are now apprenticeships in law, in accountancy, there's an architecture apprenticeship, there's a growth in the healthcare sector with nursing degree apprenticeships as well, and a huge expansion in the number of sort of IT and digital apprenticeships that are now available to people. Turning it around the other way, these are some of the very large employers who recruit people from across Greater Manchester. I appreciate not every one of these employers has got a site in Greater Manchester, but for example, AstraZeneca pick up young people who've left colleges for sort of Stockport and Trafford. BAE Systems attract young people from sort of Bolton, Bury, Wigan areas of Greater to go and work there. But these are huge employers. These might traditionally recruit 50, 100, 150 apprentices every year onto their programmes, and then sort of progress on to full-time employment beyond that. What I would say is for every one of these logos that we may recognise, there's probably 25, 30 smaller businesses out there whose logos we might not recognise, but would still offer a fantastic apprenticeship opportunity. And you might find that the engineer at BAE Systems is doing exactly the same apprenticeship qualification that the engineer at the small business around the corner, and it may even be delivered by the same training provider. So in all cases, whatever size of the business, the qualifications are the same. Obviously, I appreciate that the work experience element of it may be slightly different depending upon the company size. It's a bit dry, this slide, I'll be honest with you, but it's worth drawing a comparison between the levels of apprenticeships and their academic equivalents. So the intermediate apprenticeship at level 2, in terms of the amount of effort and knowledge and skills you're going to have to demonstrate to achieve that apprenticeship qualification, that intermediate apprenticeship qualification, it's roughly the same as achieving 5 GCSEs at grade 4 and above. The advanced apprenticeships are roughly equivalent to a BTEC level 3 or 2 A levels. And then higher apprenticeships operate between HNC through HND, through degree level and up to master's level, level 7. And you also have additionally degree apprenticeships operating at degree and master's level. The difference between a higher apprenticeship at level 6 and a degree at level 6 is that the actual qualification on a degree apprenticeship must be a degree, whereas you can have a qualification at higher apprenticeship that is equivalent to a degree but not necessarily a degree. It does cause some confusion that particular area. In terms of entry points into apprenticeships, we tend to find that the intermediate apprenticeships are designed particularly for young people who are looking to leave school at the end of year 11 as an alternative to go into college or university. Also for people who are perhaps looking for a career change and need to start at a level 2 qualification to move into that new career. Advanced apprenticeships, we find that about 50% of them are also available to young people leaving school at the end of year 11, because naturally a GCSE leaver could progress onto a level 3 at A level or level 3 at BTEC, so some of those advanced apprenticeships are available. The other half of them tend to be aimed at college leavers or sixth form leavers instead. And a lot of that simply comes down to employer choice, or in some cases the sector kind of demands that. So for example, the paralegal apprenticeship at level 3 is almost always offered to a college leaver rather than a school leaver. So you do get some discrepancies there, but in all cases, kind of the entry requirements and the kind of the qualifications that an applicant would have are determined by the employer, because ultimately the apprenticeship is a job. Just want to touch a little bit on degree apprenticeships when my slide moves forward. There we go. So degree apprenticeships have been around about 5 years now, and they are effectively a part-time degree. In exactly the same way as all apprenticeships, you will find that your apprentice works 80% of the time and studies 20% of the time, but they will study with a university, and the apprenticeship qualification that they work towards will be a degree. They have some financial benefits. Salaries for degree apprentices in Greater Manchester tend to be between about £14,000 and £16,000, or we do get some more than that as well. The second financial advantage is the apprentice doesn't pay for the university. The employer pays those for them. Same as with any apprenticeship, all the fees are paid for by the employer or government. They do take longer. Full-time degrees taking 3 years, of course. A degree apprenticeship takes longer because you wouldn't expect a person to be able to work full-time and get the degree in 3 years. But whilst that might seem a long time, particularly for a year 11 leaver right now, or even a college leaver right now, the benefits you get for working out, you gain so much work experience during those 4 to 6 years. Your job role will change, you'll get promotions, you're working towards a degree, you'll go to the same graduation ceremony as the full-time students, but you haven't paid for yours. You get all the same access to the university facilities and National Union student benefits as well. But best of all, I'll never say that you're guaranteed a job at the end of an apprenticeship, but if I was an employer who had employed a degree apprentice, paid their salaries, invested time, paid for their tuition fees, I'd be highly likely to retain them once they completed their apprenticeship. So the progression rates for degree apprenticeships are very high. And I should add overall that statistically, 75% of all apprentices stay with their employer at the end of their apprenticeship, so progress into a full-time role. Of the remaining 25%, 15 go on and get another job with another employer within a month. So you do have a 90% progression rate into full-time employment after you've completed your apprenticeship. At this point, I'd really like to bring in the apprentices just to give myself a rest and so you can hear a different voice. I'd like to bring in Courtney first of all, if that's okay. And Courtney, if you could introduce yourself, let us know who you're employed by, which apprenticeship you're doing and who your training provider is. Then I've got a few more questions for you.
Hi, my name is Courtney. I did a level 3 business administration apprenticeship at Brother UK, and my training provider was with the Apprentice Academy.
Okay, thank you. And can I simply ask you why you decided to do an apprenticeship?
I chose an apprenticeship because after I left college, I didn't want to go to university, and the jobs I was applying for wanted the experience. So I started applying for apprenticeships instead, so I could carry on learning the role and also have the experience for when I came to move on.
Thank you. And am I right thinking, have you completed your apprenticeship now?
Yeah, I completed my apprenticeship 2 years ago and got full-time employment with the same company after I finished it.
Excellent. So you're one of the 75% then. Can I ask you, what did your parents think about it when you said you wanted to go for an apprenticeship? What was their reaction?
They were encouraging. One of my parents had actually done an apprenticeship themselves when they were 16, so he was happy for me to carry on going for it.
Excellent. So you didn't have any kind of barriers to encourage you to go to university instead then?
No, nothing.
Excellent. All right, well, thanks very much, Courtney. I'm going to move on to Jacob now, if that's okay. And if you could introduce yourself in the same way, please, Jacob.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jacob. I work with AECOM, a civil engineering company, and I started out as a traffic engineering apprentice, but now I'm fully graduated as a traffic engineer. Started with a degree in apprenticeship, studying civil engineering at Bolton Uni, 4-year part-time degree.
Excellent, thank you very much. And why did you decide to do an apprenticeship?
Just a lot more suited to problem-based working out kind of learning rather than study by the book. And generally I was mostly worried about finding a job after my degree because it wasn't guaranteed like it is now.
That's right. So when you applied to AECOM, was there pretty much a guarantee on the table that once you'd finished your degree apprenticeship, there'd be a full-time role for you?
If I didn't mess up, yeah, pretty much.
And what did your parents think when you said you were going for the degree apprenticeship as opposed to perhaps going to university?
Shocked, because I was already accepted to go to university in Edinburgh. And I just did a 180 because I was just worried.
Did you meet any resistance from them?
No, they wanted me to be a plumber at first because they preferred working the trades because it was safer.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what do they think now that you've completed the degree apprenticeship? Do they fully support that you think it's the best idea you made, best choice you made?
Yeah, definitely. It was hard work, but it was worth it.
Excellent, thank you very much. And finally, Hannah, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Hannah Brown and I work for Tameside Council and I do a HGV level 3 mechanic apprenticeship.
Excellent. So you still currently doing that apprenticeship?
Yes, I'm 8 months in out of 3 years.
Wow, okay. And what was your journey in there? Did you go straight from school to your apprenticeship or college to your apprenticeship?
No, I've actually had previous jobs. I left a mechanical engineering apprenticeship to come here.
Okay. Excellent. So what attracted you to the HGV mechanic role then?
I chose to do the role of HGV mechanic because I wanted to expand my knowledge and skill set in areas that are new to me and take on different challenges. Doing this apprenticeship allowed me to build up confidence in driving, fixing and operating all sorts of vehicles on a daily basis in and outside of work, as well as getting to grips with using all sorts of different tools.
Excellent, that's really good. So sounds like, was this your sort of second apprenticeship then?
Yeah, it was.
What was your parents' reaction to you going for an apprenticeship in the first place, and then what did they think when you changed your mind to the current one?
Well, they were chuffed when I went for my first apprenticeship, and it was actually my mum who got me interested in this apprenticeship at the council because she already works there.
Okay.
So yeah, my parents were really happy when I told them that I got an apprenticeship because they both work for the council as well. They both offered nothing but support when I was starting out as a brand new apprentice, and they told me a good trade job was a career path, and that's exactly what I needed, a career.
Excellent, yeah. So when do you expect to complete your apprenticeship then?
It should be, I'm 8 months in now, it's 3 years, so 2 and a bit years. Okay.
And was that the growth company you were doing that with, sorry?
Yes, it was.
Excellent, okay. Thank you very much for that. It's been really insightful. Hopefully we'll have some questions at the end that we can ask you as well. What I'm going to move on to now is a bit more information about where you can find apprenticeship opportunities, and as I said, I'll touch on sort of the reality of the current situation as well, in case anyone's listening with some Year 11 students who are still looking for apprenticeships. The slides move on. So there are a number of different ways But I think one of the easiest ways to use the government's Find an Apprenticeship website. If you go to .gov.uk, you can type in apprenticeships, or you can simply Google Find an Apprenticeship. The reason it's probably the good starting point is you tend to find probably between 2/3 and 3/4 of apprenticeship vacancies will appear on the Find an Apprenticeship website. It tends to be where training providers put the opportunities on. And what the website is, it's a live apprenticeship vacancy website. So it's a job website, but just for apprenticeships. So you can register on there. You can search for the type of apprenticeship you're looking for. So, for example, you could put your home postcode in, type in the type of apprenticeship. If you don't have an idea of what you want to do, you can leave that blank. You can determine how far you wish to travel, commute, and the number of opportunities will then filter out for you to have a look at. You can search. Each individual vacancy will give you a description of the role, what the entry requirements are, what skills you should have already, what skills you'll gain throughout the apprenticeship, what the salaries are, how long it is, who the training provider is, and many other bits of important information. You can make applications through the apprenticeship, Find an Apprenticeship website as well. It'll either take you to a generic application form, or perhaps for some of the larger businesses, it might take you through to their own website and their own application form. The other thing you look at on the amazing Apprenticeships website, there is a vacancy snapshot. This is a slightly different way. It's not live vacancies, but it's large employers who identify and inform you when their recruitment processes for their apprenticeship programs will commence. So if you've got any students here, young people in perhaps year 10 or year 12 who want to start planning for what they're going to do from next September, that's certainly worth a look at to find out when those recruitment opportunities will appear. What I did yesterday, so bear in mind this is a live vacancy, do change by the minute. I had a look on Find an Apprenticeship, and I simply did a search of 20 miles around Manchester city centre to see how many vacancies there are. And I think the first point to make out is that we are going through, everyone says this, unprecedented times, and we are, and it's had an impact on apprenticeship vacancies. So in England yesterday morning, there were 6,218 live vacancies. That's around about 30% of what I'd normally expect to see at this time of year. So vacancies are definitely down. A slightly higher impact in Greater Manchester. On this particular website, as I said, it picks up sort of 2/3 to 3/4, so I can't account for every single vacancy, but in Greater Manchester on the Find an Apprenticeship website there were 522 yesterday morning, which is about 25% of the 2,000 I would normally expect to see. And you can see a breakdown of the different levels of apprenticeships there as well. What I wanted to do is just highlight where the opportunities still are. Yes, some sectors have been impacted. We're not seeing any retail apprenticeships, with the exception of pharmacy, if you want to class that as retail. We're seeing fewer sort of construction opportunities at the moment, although we're hoping that will start growing soon. These are the top 5 at the level 2 intermediate apprenticeships. Hairdressing remains strong, business and administration remains strong, motor vehicle, what Hannah's doing, remains strong as well. Engineering and manufacturing have started coming up again in the last few weeks, and the one that surprised me most was sort of chef and hospitality, but they are still recruiting in that particular sector. And moving into the advanced apprenticeships, as you can see, the business administration, customer service roles really strong in the advanced apprenticeship, 93 of them there. Again, engineering, manufacturing. And what we tend to see at advanced level is a bit more in IT and digital as well. So I've separated digital marketing away from IT because they are slightly different skill set. But IT roles, so your sort of cybersecurity, software programming, 25 vacancies, digital marketing 23, and then accounts and finance remain strong as well. So some of those kind of business sectors, particularly in the digital field, are still strong at the moment. So there are opportunities there. And I just touched on, there's only 22 opportunities across both higher and degree apprenticeships. So slides have lost alignment there slightly. But again, a lot of digital and some in sales. And then the care home managers, I think, are slightly they're more for people, I believe, who are already working in the sector. So that's probably not a role that perhaps an A-level leaver or a BTEC leaver could go straight into. But it's just to highlight where the opportunities are. So just to reiterate, I think, yeah, business, IT, digital, those opportunities have remained strong throughout this period and continue to recruit onto their apprenticeship programs. Other places to look. So find an apprenticeship isn't the be all and end all. I would say it was a starting point. There are, every training provider will have their own website. Every training provider, college, university that actually delivers the apprenticeships will usually advertise the vacancies on their own own website as well for employers that they work with, and they will offer a range of opportunities depending on how many different types of apprenticeships that they deliver. Employers, of course, will put their opportunities on their own websites as well, so you can apply directly for them. Keep an eye out on social media. The Greater Manchester Apprenticeship Hub has the hashtag See Different social media campaign, where we highlight opportunities, and I'll come to that a little bit more in a couple of slides time. Don't underestimate the friends and family. I think Hannah touched on that one of her parents already worked at Tameside Council. Police apprenticeships, people often find out about those opportunities through friends and family, and it tends to happen a lot in engineering as well. People find out about the opportunities through a family member who already works at that business. So keep your ear to the ground. It's not just about online searching, it's about having those some of those networks as well, and listening out for the opportunities. So the Greater Manchester Apprenticeship Hub, as it's said, brings together sort of key apprenticeship information in one place. So we manage that as part of some of the other functions that we do. Has a number of case studies on there, particularly from current and former apprentices, where you really get to hear about their story, and that's apprenticeships of all ages, of all different types of careers there as well. We highlight through both the website and our social media campaign training provider open days, training provider opportunities, vacancies, and signposts to other websites and useful information. So that's the Apprenticeship Hub website. Something relatively new is GMAX, the Greater Manchester Apprenticeship and Careers Service, which presents apprenticeships and other post-16 options in one website. So this is relatively new. I believe it's being piloted in some schools in Greater Manchester during the current year, and we're expecting that to go live as of next year. And that is a place where young people can search and apply for all post-16 opportunities all in one place together. So it enables a person to search for an A-level, for a BTEC, or for an apprenticeship. And it's not just for those year 11 students, but it's for anybody who's looking for an opportunity. So if you want to find out more, of course, you can contact the National Apprenticeship Service if you wish. You can contact us via our email hello@the-apprenticeship hub as well, where we can answer some questions for you directly. And I would recommend sort of following up and looking at some of those other websites. I'm going to end the presentation at this point and have a look at some of the questions that we have. Pardon me a moment while I have a couple of technical issues. Thank you very much.
I can read the questions out if that's easier, if you're struggling to find them.
That's okay. I've just got them at this moment. So I found Sarah asked, does an apprentice have to stay with the training provider for the full amount of time, or can they switch if they don't like it? Yes and no. So if you are doing a particular apprenticeship and I'll try and give you a real example. So yes, we had an apprentice a few years ago who changed employers, but I'm not sure if you change training providers, what impact that would have. May I take that one away? Because I know the impact on if you change employers and how that works, but not so much if you change training providers. Charlotte, can we record that one and pick that up separately, if that's okay, and perhaps publish that on See Different, or if anyone wants to leave any contact details, we can return that directly. A question for the apprentices from Mandy. So I'll start with you, Courtney, if that's okay. The question is, how did you find out about your apprenticeship opportunity?
I found out about mine because I'd signed up with a few different apprenticeship providers, and the Apprentices Academy contacted me directly to say there's an opportunity to go in at Brother. So if you want to apply for it, then they'll put you forward for it, and then got the interview through. So it came direct from the provider.
Excellent. So would you recommend that to other young people looking for apprenticeships to sort of express your interest with as many providers as possible?
Definitely. I'd signed up with 5 different providers at the time. Excellent. just to find out what was out there.
All right, thank you. Jacob, how did you find out about your apprenticeship?
I knew of ACOM before, the civil engineering company. I just looked on their website straight away. So
you applied you had a motivation to work for that employer, so you applied directly to them?
Yep.
Excellent. That's a different way of doing it, but would recommend that as well. And then, did you find out?
Pardon? Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Was that to me?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I found out about my apprenticeship because my mum works for Tameside Council, and she informed me of the ongoing vacancy.
Excellent. So that goes back to the point I made about friends and family and taking advantage of some of your networking. David asks, how do I know if an apprentice will be the right route for my child? I don't think anyone ever knows for sure. All I can say is arm yourself with as much information as possible so that you can make an informed decision. So if they've selected or are thinking about a particular type of apprenticeship, get them to speak to some employers, speak to your careers advisors at school. If you get the opportunity, speak to some real apprentices, speak to the training providers. I think as long as you've armed yourself with the enough information to make that decision, then you can make that informed decision on that basis. But yeah, until you've actually done that, I'm not sure you can be 100% sure. So we always say to young people, do your research, I think. Just scrolling down. Nicola asks, can my son get an apprenticeship without GCSEs? Short answer, yes. Slightly longer answer is most employers tend to want young people with at least 5 GCSEs at grade 4 and above, and particularly maths and English. It's not a hard and fast rule. Some employers request slightly lower grades. They might ask for 3s. Other employers might ask for 5s or 6s, depending on the actual apprenticeship. But there are opportunities out there where you can progress to an apprenticeship without without any GCSEs. What you would find is if you haven't achieved maths and English, you will do that as part of your apprenticeship, and you'll do what we call functional skills, English and maths as well. If your son can't find an apprenticeship because of his lack of GCSEs, if that's the case, then there are alternatives. There's things called traineeships, which are sort of stepping stones into apprenticeships, which can last up to a year now. They've just changed, where a young person would go to a training provider, work on their maths and English, work on their employability skills, so the CV writing, things like that. But also factored into that would be some work experience with a real employer. And the idea with the traineeship is that at the end of the traineeship, the young person will progress to an apprenticeship, perhaps with the employer they've actually done their work experience with. So there are other options if the lack of GCSEs becomes a kind of consistent barrier. Christine asks, one for the apprentices here, what's the best thing about being an apprentice? So I'll start with you, Courtney, if that's okay.
I think the best thing for me was that there was not an expectation for you to know everything all the time. So if you didn't know something, there's always someone there to ask, and they didn't look at you like why don't you already know that? Because they know that you're learning, so no expectation really to prove yourself at first.
So it's clear then that your employer had an understanding that yourself and the other apprentices, it was their first job. You're not experts on day one. You're there to kind of develop on the apprenticeship. That's really good to hear. Jacob, what's the best thing about being an apprentice?
Money's pretty good. It's better to have money than with your broke uni friends. And generally it's quite nice at the end of your apprenticeship, when you see graduates coming into your company, you are quite a few steps above them just because of all the experience that you've had as well. So at the same age, you're like 2 or 3 years ahead generally.
Excellent. So I have heard that before, that particularly with the degree apprenticeships, that there's a significant advantage in terms of time over sort of full-time university students, and obviously the salaries and no debt as well. So yeah, good point there. Thank you. And Hannah, what's the best thing about being an apprentice? I think you were on mute, Hannah.
Sorry about that. I love the skill I've learned. To say that I've only been there 8 months, I can fix cars, and that I think that's really, really good.
Excellent. So it looks like you really enjoy it as well.
Oh, I love my job. Yeah, it's amazing. Definitely the best job I've ever had, and I've done lots of different things.
Excellent. Thank you. And a final question again for the apprentices. Laura asks, do the apprentices have any advice or tips for young people looking for an apprenticeship right now? So Courtney.
I'd say to look into any companies that you want to do an apprenticeship for, to see how they work, how the staff find it, how other people who work there like the job, and make sure you know what it is that they do before you go into it, so you've got an understanding at first.
Excellent, good advice, thank you. Jacob, what tips have you got?
Just not enjoy the working environment, but enjoy like the work-based problems a lot more, and generally it's still not that worth the time to look for apprenticeships now. Sorry, we haven't talked about the levy scheme, but the way that, I'm going to speak quickly about it, the way that the levy scheme works is that every company that earns, I think, over 3 million needs to put in money to the levy scheme. So, and it is a tax, so regardless of even right now, the companies are still paying it. So it's just money they're essentially throwing away if they don't get an apprentice. So there is still incentive for a lot of companies to get apprentices.
No, that's a really good point. Thank you. Yeah, we won't go to the sort of the complexities of the levy system, but yeah, large employers are making a contribution to the cost of the apprenticeships, and they can recoup that by recruiting an apprentice. Hence, one of the reasons why we've seen a growth, particularly in some of the degree apprenticeships with large businesses that perhaps historically didn't recruit apprentices. So it's been a real blessing to the sector. And finally, Hannah, what tips or advice would you give a young person looking for an apprenticeship?
The best advice I could give someone is, if you see an apprenticeship that you really quite fancy, is go for it. Because when I was applying to work as a mechanic, I had so many people laughing at me, telling me I couldn't do it or not to go for it because I wouldn't get the job. And I ignored them and I went for it anyway, and I'm now coming out brighter on the other side. So definitely, if you like it, go for it. Don't let anybody tell you not to.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Right, I think that is all of the questions. Bear with me, see if there's been any more since I've been looking at them. I think I'm on a bit of a go slow. Yeah, just on the provider point, I've had a further little think about that. It's quite complex changing training providers. You can change employers fairly easily, as long as you're working in the same type of job role that you did before, and the training provider would sort that out. If you change training providers, you would need to make sure that the new training provider delivers exactly the same qualification, and secondly, they need to have a relationship with that employer as well. And you may find there's an exclusivity clause between the training provider and the employer that prevents the employer working with another provider. So it's fairly complicated. But to be honest, I've heard of apprentices changing employers, but I haven't heard of apprentices changing training providers, except in the very exceptional circumstances where perhaps the training provider is closed down. And then the government's education skills funding agency would take responsibility to make sure that the apprentice is moved to an appropriate training provider. I hope that helps. Just give it a minute to see if anyone else wants to ask any further questions. Just at this point, thanks for everyone for their insights today. It's been really great to hear from some apprentices sharing their stories and giving their tips as well. You can keep up to date with the other Virtual Apprenticeship Week activities, which you can see on here via GMAC's website, gmacs.co.uk. And we thank you very much for everyone that's attending today. And if there's no further questions, I wish you a good evening.